Just as every year we had the COP again, and it was again such an epic failure, just as every year. And I didn't really plan to make a video about the COP. I tended to ignore the whole thing like every year because nothing will come out of it anyway. But then I started going down this rabbit hole of like, okay, what's going on here? Like, what are the numbers? How can we make sense of that? And where are we actually in this whole process on fighting climate change? So, $100 billion. $100 billion. This is what we, the privileged, the global north, are supposed to pay the other countries in terms of to do anything, like the smallest minimal thing. That's twice the defense budget of Germany or Saudi Arabia. It's half of the Chinese defense budget. It's an eighth of the US defense budget. A fifth of the global weapons trade. A thirtieth was what the costs of the war in Ukraine are so far. Well, or 10 times the German arms export. So I feel we would have that money. That's a third of the World Cup funding. A third of the World Cup funding. So there are many ways, now when you superimpose that and say, okay, this is what we do to help other nations, to help other people. But what would it take to end the whole darn thing? To kind of stop getting an idea to stop climate change. There are many ways how we should do that. There's all sorts of there's the whole adaptation mitigation. But there's technical fixes, there's behavior change, there's consumption errors that need to be made right. There's so many things. Experts then agree and say it would really take us a lot of money to end climate change. The range is from 300 billion to 50 trillion. 50 trillion. That's a 5 with 13 zeros. So in this mind-boggling amount, well, if you compare it in the optimistic scenario, we could end climate change 3 times over with the US defense budget. That would be the equivalent as if everybody, without all the economic ramifications and all these things, as if everybody in the US wouldn't get paid in their jobs for 26 days. 26 days. In Germany it would be a little bit different because it's less people. We wouldn't be paid for about 1 year and 4 months. I would be willing actually to invest that money to just end the discussion. It's not about the damage, it's not about the destruction, it's not about the harm that is being done to nature and people. It's more of this not needing to talk about climate change ever again. Never talking about it again because it needs to end. The optimistic scenario to end it is the equivalent of the money that Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos have. Or the money that the 10 richest people in the world made in 2021, in 1 year. So that's what it would take. If you take the pessimistic scenario, well, if you take all the billionaires that are compiled in Forbes, then you would have 20% of what is needed. That's 2,668 people who could end a substantial proportion of climate change. So that would be another option. But what that tells us is this whole concept and distribution of money is completely feeble. We lost our mind on how we distributed that. The richest 5,000 people of the world, if they wouldn't make any money for 2 or 3 decades, we would end climate change. That's 5,000 people, 5,000 people. That's 0.0001% of the population. That's 0.0001% of the population of the world. If they wouldn't make any money for 2 or 3 decades, climate change would have ended. And that should be worth it not only for the damage and the destruction, but just to stop the discussion. So it's a fair point to assume that the way that not only money is distributed is completely rigged, but also we are not really paying for the damage we are doing. The true costs of like what we need to be held accountable for, they need to be taken into the equation. And we in the global north, we could afford that. We could pay that. The people in the global south, in the less privileged countries, there's no way that they can pay that. So we need to be held accountable. We need to be like invest into the future that we still want to have. We could afford it, not as an end in itself, but also as a responsibility towards the world. After all, it was us who created the problem in the global north to begin with, not that we haven't abused the rest of the world before. So this would be a pretty small thing for us to do, considering all the historical ramification and the fact that we are sacrificing our future. So that's something we should, I think about a little bit more strongly, and not only, when COP is around, but basically like all the time. Maybe that's a little thought. Thank you for your attention. And my apologies for this little rant.